4, 3, 2, 1. Good night. Good night. Good night. Uh-oh. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night. Good night. Good night, everyone. Welcome to the Fatherhood Think Tank. Another night of inspirational conversation with fathers about father issues that affect not just their family, their children, as well as our community. I am your curator, Dr. Ryan Osborne Williams of the Fatherhood Think Tank, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation tonight. I just want to definitely welcome our guest tonight. Well, not our guest, our father panelists who are always here. And can't wait to, I just can't wait. I know people might even be looking like, who is the guy talking? We don't even know who that is. But they changed the host. They got a new guy there or something. No, it's just same person, just less hair. That's all. But we're gonna have, I think we're gonna have a really, really good conversation tonight. And so we'll be able to really look and hear some experiences based on our topic tonight. But let me go ahead and get guys to introduce themselves, and then let's get back to the night's topic.
Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the 99th episode of the Fatherhood Think Tank. Man, it goes to show when men come together and put a vision and act on a vision and move on a vision, what can happen. So this is our 99th episode, and I'm just proud to be a part of it with such a courageous, intelligent men. My name is Lionel Lightborn. I'm the father to a tribe of 7 young adults. 3 young ladies, 4 young men, 1 granddaughter, and 1 grandson. So it's always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Good evening, everybody. J. Rob Bernard, father of 2 young adults.
Good evening, everybody. Donald Jones, father of 1 adult daughter and a teenage daughter and a teenage son.
Frederick Adams, I'm father of 3, 1 adult, 2 kids, and 1 grandson.
I'm Justin Gibbs. I'm a father of 4 and a half because my other half is missing, and I'm always here to enjoy with you gentlemen.
Okay, and that's everybody. So let's just get down to what the nice topic is. And again, before we get to the nice topic, I just want to remind people, hey, if you're watching, you start watching, join, watch, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the button. Definitely like it if you like what we're talking about. And then if you don't like it so we'll know that you don't like it. They have the thumbs up, thumbs down. So you can put that on there. We're live now. Tonight's topic is how fathers can build strong parent-child relationships. And it's really good we have that because we have some experts on here tonight who have built some very strong father-child relationships with their children. And as we talk about it, we kind of also talk about parent-child relationships. We're talking about how fathers can build them. And we're not just talking about fathers building, we're also talking about how fathers can build them also with the other parent. Because I think that's something that we not even, our topics here are geared to fathers, they're viewed to fathers, but they're not exclusively for fathers, they're for parents. And parents are both mothers and fathers. So I always want to really put that, because I know this idea that sometimes we think that fathers are not parents. They're just fathers, our daddies, our ATM machines, but they're also parents. Sometimes they have to fight to be a parent. They have to do things that they might not want to have to do to really advocate for themselves to move into that parent role. But I think any parent will do anything for their children. They might not do it for the other parent, of another person, but they probably would do it for their children because that's a special bond that children and parents have. So let me throw it out there. First dibs at, you know, this topic tonight. How can fathers build a strong parent-child relationship? And
Oh,
and oh, go ahead, Lightbone.
I feel like I'm coming in like Biggie. Oh, oh. I always wanted to do that too. No, I think back to your point, to your disclaimer with the Fatherhood Think Tank, as the Fatherhood Think Tank was created to cater or to serve the total parent. You understand? So that's inclusive of father, mother, and child, and anybody that's a part of that particular process. So there could be father, mother, and child, and extended family, and community, and village. So father, mother, child, and village. That's the scope of the Fatherhood Think Tank when it comes to catering to the total parent. And so with that, when we're talking about how fathers, and what's the topic again, Ron?
Huh?
Say the topic again. The topic again.
The topic is how fathers can build a strong parent-child relationship. How can they?
Okay. Now you're gonna love this because this just popped in my head. And the word is so ironic too. You ready? By being, you ready for this? Transparent. And coincidentally, that word actually has parent in it. And so by being transparent, that means, in simple terms, it means you're being real with your children all the time so they get a real experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything you do with your child is organic, and everything your child see you do becomes organic as well. And so that's what transparency is. Particularly it was when I was raising my children. They got to see my vulnerable sides. And sometimes they got to see my terrible sides. The terrible sides were not so much where it violated their innocence or anything like that. But they got to see my terrible side when I didn't handle things responsibly, and where I may have flew off the handle and I had to, and it's amazing because my terrible side actually activated my vulnerable side. And so when I may have misbehaved or misspoke, then it made me accountable to my vulnerable side to go back and apologize and tell them that's not the way to act, even though I may have acted that way. And so that's what being transparent is all about for me, because I was a transparent. I think it's one of the most valuable things I gave to my children. And they got to see both sides. They got to see the hip dad, but they also got to see the hypocrite dad too. So that's one of the things that one of the words I want to start with, transparent.
Well, it's funny you say that because I argue this all the time, is that parents, two-home parents, should be very transparent with their kids about most things. And then they would have their children to be able to start developing a mindset of this idea of understanding things a little bit better, right? And be able to start processing emotions, processing thoughts, feelings, things that may happen. And what you do see, and I've seen a lot of, is that sometimes you have parents who will be transparent after there has been distance, and they're being transparent to tell their side of the story.
Okay.
And tell what has happened. And a lot of times I think that parents feel like, hey, kids don't need to know everything. They're not mature enough to know everything. But I think that's a very big misnomer. I think that Gene can really talk about that kids are learning from the time that they are born, or they learn while they're in Europe.
Yeah.
So they're learning every day. And so we are the ones who take this idea that, oh, kids don't know what's going on. They don't know something. They're not experiencing, but they are. They're taking in everything, and everything that they're learning is through this learned behavior that they're observing every day among us. So when people say, well, why does kid act this way? It's not by osmosis. There are some things that they have learned, they have picked up, they have took the cues, they have analyzed, they have figured out, if I keep crying, they're gonna come put something in my mouth. And that means the bottle or some food, or they're gonna come and pick me up. So all of these things become learning for the child.
Mhm.
So, it's amazing how we sometimes take that for granted, that our kids are really they are learning beings who know something. Sometimes we kind of take that son. I'm going to use this term, and it's going to be funny. We use that son thing on them. Son, you my son, so you don't know as much as I do, son. I'm schooling you, son.
Okay.
But they sometimes do know, because they are learning. They know sometimes more about us than we know about ourselves.
Mhm.
It's interesting that you say that, because the first things kids learn to do is observe, right?
Mhm.
And so when you say they learn more about you than you know about yourself, it's because they observe your behaviors, because that's the way they're taking an input, right?
Mhm.
So Ron said that they learn from in utero, which is true.
Mhm.
They're learning behaviors, they're learning sounds. It may be a muffled sound, but they're learning sounds.
Mhm.
What you put in is what you get out, right? So now you have it when they're born, and now the external environment is what's being input into them. So
Mhm.
like Ron's saying, first form of communication is the crying, and that's how they're gonna let you know either I need to be fed, changed, held, or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think one thing that parents do is they mistake babies' cues, right,
Mhm.
for manipulation. And what happens is parents have to understand that the baby may be like you. You know how sometimes they say your kid acts just like you do. They may be like you, but they are not you. And sometimes we get so caught up in not having them repeat some of the same mistakes we made that we turn them to those mistakes, right? And so, because it pushes them away. So you have to realize that a lot of things that you do can either aid the bonding or
Mhm.
distance you from the bonding. And I think it's very important what Lionel was saying, when you have to be transparent. Allow your kids to know that you made mistakes and see that you made mistakes, because that's one of the things that's going to bring them closer to you. I was having a conversation the other day, and we were just talking about that. So this topic is it's funny, because one of the things that we were saying is you can guide someone and tell them the mistakes you made, but sometimes they still have to go through it
Correct.
in order for them to learn. And
Mhm.
so you're not going to shelter them from all the mistakes in the world, but allowing them to go through it and then letting them see that you are still there for them aids with the bonding. And this starts at a very young age. This starts when they're you know, first learning to cry, first learning to walk. There's no such thing as spoiling a baby. Pick up the baby when they're crying. A lot of I know I'm going off on a few things here, but I mean,
Mhm.
you hit a topic that is very important, because I think with research now, a lot of things that parents once thought is actually the opposite. So if a baby's crying a lot and you pick it up, I'm going to spoil the baby. It's not spoiling the baby to pick up the child. It's teaching them that attachment and bonding, security. You'll notice that as they get older, they do check-ins. So like, and the checking is when they start to learn how to walk. They'll take a few steps, they'll look back to see what your reaction is. If you don't give them a bad reaction, they take a few more steps and keep going. Then they turn back and check in. That's because they built that security with you from such a young age that they're looking to continue that security and that bonding. And so you'll notice that fast forward to teenage years, it's the same thing, but it's a different form, right? So the check-in would be more like, hey, my friends plan on doing, ABC. What do you think? And they're looking for your input on that. And so it's important that you continue to be there and provide input, be transparent, give them that backing, because those are the strongest ways to bond with the child. Allow them to explore, allow them to be themselves, because again, they may be like you, but they are not you. A lot of times parents want their kids to walk this straight, fine, narrow line that is so unrealistic, because they forced the child to be who and what they weren't. And so when you start to realize that I have to let this child be who they are, but I have to guide them along the way, that's the most powerful thing that you can possibly do.
It's amazing.
Oh, go ahead, Donald.
Appreciate it, Coach. Thank you. And I do want to say, bro, I'm happy I'm here for this subject at this time because it's amazing how we're talking about this. And I've been having this constant conversation with my children about them not having to be like me. Even though sometimes I want them to do certain things, to get that support that a parent would want, seeing your child do something that you wanted to do or you did, I always push them to make sure that they're doing the things that they want to do and not being influenced, but supporting them. And as Lionel said at the beginning, it's about being transparent and real, because the biggest thing that you can do for a child, especially when they're coming into their teenage and adult years, is allowing them to be themselves and coming to you and not having much of an opinion, but having that conversation that they want to have just to get that check-in that Rob is talking about, that they need and desire so they can move forward and get and grow better. But go ahead, Ron. Thank you.
Well, I was just as I realized, then I started listening to what you were saying. I think that it is very important. Almost what it's funny you saying what you said, and I'm glad I let you go first, because I was going to talk about a conversation I was just having about how I know a parent who's saying they know their children, right? They know their children, they raised them, they know the values they gave them, this and that. And I was really trying to, in the discussion we was having, really making a point that yes, we may know our children, but we also don't know them. There's parts of them who they will never tell us who they are or what they are, and sometimes we have to look at what they do and understand what they're doing. In a situation that sometimes they're doing something is not to be against you, it's to be for them. It's not to go against our family and the way our family operates. It's for them to find themselves and for them to be able to establish who their own family is going to be. And I think that becomes very difficult for mothers and fathers because they have an idea of how they want their child to be. They know their child. And I gave them, when I was talking to my friend about this, I gave them the example of kids who have decided to change their sexual identity. And I use that because in a big part, it is so prevalent in our society. We was having a whole conversation prior to this about, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, right? And because there are certain things that is considered something, because we live in a postmodern. I had to tell somebody today, it was like, hey, what kind of person are you? I say, I'm a modern person. I don't really follow a lot of postmodern practices. And the person was like, I don't understand what that means. Postmodern, like I'm a modern person. I believe in, those. I don't believe in a lot of, not that I don't believe in them, but I don't practice a lot of new postmodern ideas and way things operate. And that's a, that, and I'm telling people, you want to be, politically correct and say, you want to be the way you want to be. Say, I'm just not postmodern. I'm modern. And it's okay. It will be okay than some of the stuff I hear people saying that becomes problematic for us as fathers, as for men, or what have you. But with that being said, I remember I've had clients who changed their identity, and their parents had a hard time, right? And the client didn't understand and felt like the parent is not identifying, accepting me being who I say I am now, right? And I had to, you have to have a long session and explain to the client that you have come to a conclusion of who you are and you want the world to know. But your parent only knows you as a thing, the construct that they have. So they haven't gotten to this idea of you being changing. If you were their little girl, their mind hasn't wrapped around that yet because they have their own construct of what they have expected and for you to be and even some of their own selfish ideas of what you should do, right? Based on who they say or believe you should be. So I've used that to give people, because people can understand a little bit. We really understand when we talk about sexuality today, the sexual identity, because it's so thrust on us. But then I want you to take this back to a person just deciding to be who they want to be without looking at second. Let's say your family is a bunch of people who love to be around and family oriented. Maybe that person doesn't want to be like that. Maybe they want to be a person that's isolated. Maybe they don't want to come to family events. Maybe they don't want to come to our family events. Maybe they want to go to somebody else's family events. And then that's like, hey, you know, you're not being who you are. You're not being who you're supposed to be. But they may be being who they are because of the experiences they had in their family might have been the same. Say, I don't want to be, I want to, and I think we do this very often. I think a lot of people do it, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. I'm going to wipe the slate clean and make my own new plan for me. And I'm not going to let anybody else influence.
What you're saying is perfect sense, right? So I want to start back from when you said parents say, I know my kids. Okay. So there's a truth to it and there's a false, right? Depending on the foundation you built with your child, you know behavior, right? You can say, as a parent, you can say, I know my kid would not do whatever. And based on the foundation that you built. Now, are there outliers to that? Of course, there are outliers to it because your kids will always surprise you. But also, you have to understand that your child is different depending on who they're around. The behavior that they do with you is not the behavior that they have with their friends. It's not the behavior they're going to have with a teacher. So you learn to socialize in different environments according to what is socially acceptable between the groups that you maneuver. Now that's teaching a child how to social, like those socialization skills are somewhat being lost now, but as a parent, you have to teach those skills because how I act with my friends is not how I'm going to act in the workplace. How I act in the workplace is now how I'm going to act at home. That's why you have some people, some children who are rambunctious at home, but at school, they're like, yeah, they sit in their seat, they do whatever they have to do because of the fact of the different foundations that are laid out within the environments and learning how to control yourself, right? So I say that to say you can know your child to a certain extent, but you have to understand that there is a level of exploration that each child has, right? And there's a line that they will and will not cross. So you have to be willing to say, you know what? I know my child is not going to be disrespectful to you, so it's very weird that you would tell me that because I've taught them better, right? But don't say, I know my child didn't try no cigarettes because they wouldn't smoke. You don't know that. That's something that maybe influenced around their peers and everything. And so they want to fit into that social group. So they did that. So I would say there has to be also a level of leniency that comes along with parents and understanding, because even as kids, we used to do stuff that our parents don't know. I think the one thing that happens is when you build that foundation and you continue to build it, you find out what your kids did when they become a certain age, because now they feel that they're not disappointing you. They're just letting you know about their life and things that happened. And so there is some level to learning about your child and understanding, because there's some things that like when I was an adult, I finally told my parents, hey, you know, I used to do this. And they're like, you did? But it was no longer a feeling of I'm going to get in trouble or disappoint you. It was just, yeah, because I just wanted to try it. It was nothing that was dangerous. It was nothing that was crazy. It's just something I wanted to try. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you know what? It's coincidentally, I'm gonna piggyback off what you just said, J. Rob. You hit a very pivotal point, because I always wanted to use the word like pivotal point. So you hit a pivotal point when you said that about the parents saying, I know my child, but the reality is this, and this is one of the most popular sayings. And I think as practitioners and clinicians, we do it too. So we enable parents to do it too, because we don't confront them on it. But when this popular saying of the wrong crowd, my child was with the wrong crowd. That's one of the most stereotypical sayings that we enable parents with, because we favor the child like they favor the child. And so we'll say the child was in the wrong crowd, but we'll never really own up and put the accountability on that child as being a part of the wrong crowd. So if your child is with that crowd, then guess what? He's in the wrong crowd too. So he's a part of that wrong crowd. So your child, it doesn't, because what we do is we try to preserve that child righteousness is innocent and go ahead and just put the guilt on the rest of the children, which I'm pretty sure God don't like that at all. So if he's a part of that crowd, I'm like, then he's a part of that crowd. So your child is wrong too. And I think not giving that child that the ownership of that his wrong in that crowd, as opposed to separating the wrong from the crowd, his wrong from the crowd is disingenuous as well. And that's not being transparent. You understand? So I think, and I think fathers are more innate and equipped to actually push that point and push that point on that, make that child accountable in that aspect than mothers are, because mothers are nurturers. And so, and they're not only they're nurturers, if they're nurturers, that means they're rescuers. See the difference? If they're nurturer, they're rescuer. And so they are more likely to not let the child get the consequences of his actions than the fathers. That's the different makeup of mothers and fathers. But being that as it may, we, particularly as being parents or transparent, we have a lot of things that we have to get rid. To be transparent, you have to get rid of your biases. You understand? You got to get rid of your favoritism. You understand? And until we do that, because not only as children, they're working out their kinks. As parents, we're working out our kinks. Remember, you just said it earlier, J. Rob, that we're still trying to raise our children to be the children that we were. And God is not going to give you a cheat sheet on parenting. It's not going to happen. You're never going to have the children that you were. I don't think there's a parent right now that has the child that they were. And if you have the child that they were, it's going to be plus good and bad. You understand? And you can identify those behaviors in your child. You understand? I think, but your child also comes with some gifted behaviors that you can use. You wish that you were, that you could admire in the child. And so you got to tell them the pros and cons. You say, okay, you know what? Well, my child, I see this part of me in you. And back to DJ's point, with AKA one shot, one kill. Back to DJ's point, when he said he don't want his child to be nothing like him, I'm like, no, you want your child to be the best parts of you. Not nothing like you. You just want him to be the best parts of you. Stole that from Tyler Perry. I heard him say that. He wanted his child to be the best parts of him. And I'm like, you're right. Because you didn't stay there and you didn't become a father and you wasn't a present father who loved your children and sacrifice. See, the sacrifice and the love, that's the best parts of you. Of course you want them to be that. You understand? But there's certain things that education can teach them and only experience can teach them. Right. And I think, and to TDJ's points, I think giving our children the opportunity to create their own testimony is one of those things that's going to be organic and inevitable. Because I always wanted to use that word too, inevitable. If I use it in the right context. Nevertheless, but that's just where I'm at with that part.
Let me throw something in, and I know that we have some people in the chat there live in the chat, and they have some comments. I just wanted to put that comment out that they said that parents can also be seen and not heard.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to share it from the comment section.
I think it's part of, it goes back to what Lionel was saying when he was saying you got to take away your biases. And then you have to learn to be objective, right? That is one of the most, that's the hardest things to do as a parent, is to be objective because of the biases that you have, because of the emotional attachment, because of the expectations. All this stuff lays out in front of you. And so it makes being objective kind of hard, because when you see something or something comes across you that your child has done, it's hard to give an objective response before you give an emotional response, right? And sometimes you're going to give that emotional response and later think back about it, like Lionel was saying earlier, and then the objectiveness comes in. So then you go and approach it in a certain way where you're like, you know what? The way I handled this before, not right. I'm coming at you now in a more thought out plan, right? Because one thing that we do is, I think as parents, is when we see our kids do something, I think we overreact to the sense that it's not the end of their life, just because something has happened. I think we make it seem as if it's the end of their life, end of the world. But when you think back and look at it, it's maybe just a stumbling block that they're going through. The main thing that we as parents have to do is educate them on getting over those stumbling blocks. Critical thinking is one of the things that is very lost in the generations coming behind us, right? Because they don't have those objectives for critical thinking. It's not being taught anymore, really. And that's on the level of the parents, and that's also on the level of the schools, the way they're teaching, because critical thinking is kind of out because we kind of want to shelter our kids, like Lionel was saying before. We don't want them to make these mistakes. So rather than allow you to think it through, we're going to tell you what you need to do and just say, hey, just don't worry about it. Follow my instructions and you'll be okay. So now we're just having kids being herded like sheep, right? And so that critical process, that critical thinking is out. And remember, I said the first thing that kids do is learn to observe their environment, observe the world. But the first person they start to observe is you. So if you're a certain way with them, they're going to assume that everyone is going to be that way. They're going to assume that everyone's just going to give them the answers. Everybody's going to make it easy for them. Everybody's going to be compatible. And that's not how it is. Sometimes we have to start teaching our kids the critical thinking process. We have to allow them to fail in order to achieve, so that they can start to create that success when they're on their own and not waiting for us to come around and continue to build their success, because one day we're going to be out the picture and they're going to be left to the world by themselves.
I'm glad you said that, J. Rob, because here it is, my transparency. This is where I'm at with, because I got adult kids. When they was children, I was raising them. And I want to speak to the young man's or the young woman's point in the message. Read that message again, Ron. Oh, better yet, don't worry about it. I know what it is. I got it.
No, I got you. I'm right here.
Go ahead.
They said that parents can also be seen and not heard.
And what you said about that is, I think fathers are masterful with that, right? I think the average father is masterful. Like, I'm the opposite father. I can tell you that straight up. I was the father that needed to be heard, not seen. So I wasn't the quiet father. Anything I saw, and I saw that thing coming, or whatever, they got the predictions, they got the corrections, everything. I was one of those really overly engaged fathers. And because and by my own makeup, because I'm very opinionated, that's number one. And so that's the father they got. They got a very opinionated father. The fact that I'm a social worker and an activist, so that's the father they got. And so because of my natural makeup, they got that father who was more heard than seen, right? And because of that, I saw my son experience a moment that I experienced with my dad. I remember my dad, we just riding in the truck. I just fall asleep on his ass all the time. It never fails. I get in the truck with him. I know we getting ready to talk. So I just beat him. I beat him. I sleep. I'm like, let me go to sleep before we start all that damn talking. Right? He's just trying to be a father and give advice. And nevertheless, and with all the advice he gave, I still was, even in my sleep, was able to take it, which was really ironic. And so now here I am, a father of a young man, two young men. I had to take the time, and my daughter. I got two daughters and two boys, or two men and two women now. And my son, back to your point with the critical thinking, J. Rob, my son, two situations. When he was a kid, I told him I got some tattoos, right? And so what happened is, since my youngest daughter, she was a preemie, so she was at a 50-50 point in her life where she almost passed away. She didn't almost make it. So what I did was have some tattoos on my arm, and I did a portrait and dedicated one to her. And so when my son saw the tattoo, now this is still a kid, he says to me, Dad, he says, well, why you just didn't get "I love my kids" on your tattoo? I mean, completely. I'm like, yeah, I am something that's permanent. And he corrects me on that because, again, we talk about critical thinking. He literally saw what he saw, and said what he said, which was, and guess what? Being transparent, I was open for the correction. I said, you know what? You 100% right. You should have been there when I got the tattoo. With And I think being transparent, it gives you an open forum so you can literally genuinely and organically talk to your kids. And so now I find myself, me and my son, every so often, it don't happen a lot, but every so often we trade sarcasm, right? Like me and my dad said to me one time when I was young, he said, son, I hope your head not big enough. He said, I hope your head not big for nothing. Now, this is my dad. This is not his natural, he never really naturally go that route, right? He's not he's not charismatic. He is charismatic, but not to that point. But he goes and he said, I guess I must have said something or something must have frustrated him. And he said, oh, son, I hope your head not big for nothing, right? And so now I take that, but I don't take it with a pillar of salt or being salty. I take it as funny as hell to me because my dad never cracked a joke like that with me. So I'm like, gave me something to think about. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I hope my damn head ain't big for nothing. And so now fast forward like what, 20, 30 years later, here I am with my son, and he comes around with his car, and he just comes to see me or whatever the case may be. Now he's coming to see me. So instead of me just interacting and engage with my son, right? I'm kind of pissed off on how he's keeping his car, right? We're adults now. So I'm like, damn, why I'm thinking as an adult, like, why would you work so hard for something and take care of it like this? And so I told him, I said, I hope you're not treating your life like you treat your car. Something to that point. And it's so funny to me because it brought me back to that moment with my dad when he said, I hope your head not big for nothing. Here I am 30 years removed, and I'm saying the same thing to my son, like, hope you're not treating your life like you're treating your car. And he didn't come for none of that engagement. He didn't come for, what we call it, what the young people say, he didn't come for none of that smoke. I just gave it to his ass. And so I'm saying, that's one of the joys and the innocence about being parents and being vulnerable, but most importantly, being transparent, because it opens that door for so many emotional engagement and responses where you guys don't take anything personal because that's my dad, and I get to say that's my child. And they already know that's dad, and that's how dad is going to come at you. And guess what? I know that's my child, and that's how my child is going to come at me. And so you got to understand that being parenting and children, it's a two-way street. And so you can't expect it to be a one-way street, like, oh, the parent should be responsible enough and caring enough, and all accountability should be on the parents to accept my change. But I'm like, hey, no, you got a certain level of responsibility and accountability, right? To allow your parents to transition or transform to the change that you need for them to be. And so in that sense, we have to start talking about the parent going to say, okay, you know what? Yes, you are my child, but now I got to feel like I got to learn how to be in a relationship with your humanity, right? As opposed to your childhood. And so now that's a big transition to make because now I gotta accept you. I gotta accept you as something that you're not, or even possibly something that I didn't want you to be. Or better yet, even as something I didn't raise you to be. And so do you think about the parents' buy-in as the buy-in that you want? And so we just put all the ownership on the parents when it comes to the change and never take no real responsible and accountable ownership on ourselves as to the person who's changing. You understand? And so there needs to be a two-way street, and that's where the transparency really matters.
I'm going to comment. I'm going to make two comments on what you said because I agree with what you were saying. I think one of the things that I don't want people to gloss over is the fact that you said that the joking that you do. I think a lot of times when people think about parenting, it's I have to be serious. I have to, I need to be a certain way. I think fun and everyone knows this. When you're having fun, you learn. When you're joking around, you learn. Everything doesn't have to be a sit-down lecture when it comes to dealing with your kids. And so they learn if they learn while they're having fun, why not have fun while you're teaching? Why not tell jokes? Why not tell stories? Give them something that they can grasp onto in order for them to really take in what you're saying. I know, back old school parenting was sit down, I got something to tell you. And it was just a lecture. It was a one-way conversation. They were giving you a monologue. And you had to sit there and listen to it. oftentimes you'll find that after that monologue, you don't remember nothing else that they said when it pertained to that discussion. But when you guys were exchanging ideas and doing all this back and forth, it was more meaningful. And so as parents, we got to remember that with our kids, there should be a dialogue. There should be, because they're coming from a place that we were, right? But it's always going to be new to them. So if we talk to them like they should already know, we've already failed them. So you should never talk to them like you already know. You should be talking to them like they're just coming, and have them express themselves, because there's nothing worse, and this happens between adults. There's nothing worse when I'm giving you a message, but what you're receiving has nothing to do with what I'm saying, because you're taking it wrong from what you're experiencing. And so sometimes our kids, because of what they're experiencing, when we try to deliver a message to them that's just one way in a monologue, they're missing the whole point, because they're using what they see as what could be familiar to them to how you say it, to translate parentese. You know what I'm saying, for lack of a better word. So we've got to really, you got to really tell them, hey, you know what? This is not me talking to you. This is me talking with you. And always try to figure out what it is that they want. Because again, it's very easy for us to tell them what we expect, but it's hard for us to take what they expect from us. And when they say, hey, look, you know what? I feel that, you just don't spend enough time with me. The reaction usually is, because I got to work. You think this house is free? You think you're going to get without no food? No, your response shouldn't be all that. Your response should be, well, let me try. Because they need that attention, because they're looking for guidance from you. Either you're going to give it or someone else is. Rather you give it than they get it from friends and strangers off the street.
Yeah, that reminds me, Gene, of the story of the kid who asked his dad, how much do you make an hour? And the dad told the son, I make $100 an hour. He said, okay, good. And then the kid carried on, and he asked his dad, hey dad, can I have some money? He asked dad, can I have $50? And dad was like, $50? What do you need $50 for? He said, Dad, I really need $50. I really want to have $50. And then the dad was mad. He told the boy to go to bed. Hey, go to bed. You're so selfish. Look at you asking for $50 and all the stuff that you already got. So then the dad came back to the son and said, maybe I was too harsh on him. He came back and said, hey, so son, okay, what did you, he said, I just wanted, he said, okay, well, I'll give you $50. So the dad went and gave the son $50. Then the son pulled out some money, and then the dad got ballistic. He said, why would you ask me for money? You already got money. What are you trying to buy? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. So he told him, go to bed and I'll talk to you in the morning. So the son had already had the money. And in the morning, when the dad and son was having breakfast, the dad told the son he was very disappointed in him, that he needs to understand the value of money and how money operates and what happens. And then he said, but son, I don't know what do you even want that money for? What do you need all of that money for? And he said, Dad, I just wanted to be able to, when you come home from, that you could take maybe a day off and I'll pay you for it. And at that point, the father's eyes welled up with tears, because he realized that at that point, his son really wanted to, be able to spend time with him, not on a schedule, but being able to focus like he focuses for work. Yes. How he focuses and how he puts the energy into work. Maybe if I pay you for that, I can get that from you, Father. And I think that's a classic tale. But I think, my opinion, there's a lot of fathers who want to be able to do that with their kids. They would like to be able to do it. We just have to find the time to be able to do it in the struggle of living life and providing for those kids.
Right.
You know, there are people who have the means to provide and don't do it, but I think a lot of dads would really like to have that kind of time with their kids. We just have to find unique and creative ways to make that time happen. And that is not seen to be rushed just to do, but it's genuine that we're doing it because that's what we need to do.
What's the topic for tonight? I got a little late.
Oh, the topic?
Yeah.
The nice topic is how can fathers build parent-child relationship?
Oh, okay. Okay. Because, you know, like I've said many times with our meetings, I said the way that our kids, they spell love is TIME. Our giving your kids the time, their time with you. Giving the kids their time with you. The kids see that as love. I know my son and I, you know, sometimes we sit and talk. Even though he's closer to 50 now, and we still, you know, occasionally talk. He's at the house right now with me. And we can crack on each other. But also we can be serious when we need to be. You know, and I can sit back, he'll listen to me as I'm talking, and then I sit back and listen to him, because I also, you know, I take counsel in what he's saying to me, because, you know, he may have observed something or things that I've done, or the way I said things, and then he comes back, well, Dad, you know, you could have probably said it this way, and it'd be better understood. And it gets crazy because I even people out in the that at the church or at where he works, they would say, man, well, I say TJ, you just like your dad. Like I like to crack jokes, he likes to crack jokes, you know, and the crazy things that I have done, and I would do, he does too. And just really basically working on that relationship with your kids each and every day that you're with, because you don't know how long your time is with them will be. So take each and every opportunity to spend time with your kids. Hey, come on, let's go down to Jackson and get some ice cream. There's an old-fashioned ice cream parlor there in Dania called Jackson. They make their own ice cream. They have different flavors. And when you get ice cream from there, you get ice cream. If anyone of you have ever been there, do you know what I'm talking about? But it's just like doing things with your kids, taking the time.
Well, there's a question here that we was on that topic. There was a question here in the chat, and they asked the question is how transparent you should be if your teen child comes to you and says they want to smoke weed or etc.
Oh, let me take that one.
Oh, go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead, DJ.
Please. Because my teenage daughter asked me about that, and she was asking about her first drink. And I told her, right now is not the time because I need you to mature a little bit more. But when you do that, I will be the first person you do it with, because I want you to understand that this is your time to relax. Yes, it's something that your father does, specifically smoking weed, but it's more of a medication for me because of the understanding I have about it and me working in it and knowing exactly what it does to your mind. So I have to teach you. And she was like, Dad, I just want to smoke it because it smells good. I said, I get that part, but I don't want you smoking with people that's going to do something to the weed that'll put you off in another realm that you can't come back from.
That's
At
right.
least you'll know, with me giving it to you, you know where it's coming from. You know that it's safe. And you also know that you can trust your father's judgment, because I've been doing this for a very long time. So we had a discussion. And the first question that popped out of her mouth was, Dad, I want to know something. I like, what? She said, when did you first start smoking weed? And I looked at her and she was like, just please don't lie to me. And I asked her, I said, have I ever lied to you? She was like, no. I said, I'm not going to do it now. I started when I was 13 years old. And I'll tell you exactly how I went. I told her the whole entire story. And she just looked at me. She was like, Grandma didn't know? I said, no, she wasn't paying attention because she was too busy with her own life. And at that time, us being latchkey kids, our parents weren't always around. So we had to take care of ourselves. And I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
So my decisions actually kept my brothers and my sisters from doing a lot of different stuff because I got a chance to talk to them about it. And she was like, well, do anybody else in the family smoke weed? I said, your Uncle Carl has tried. I don't know if your Uncle Demetrius has. I can't say anything about Damien because we weren't around each other too much in our teenage years as our older brother. Say, but my little sister, yeah, she's been smoking for a long time, longer than I ever known. I can't say anything about that because I wasn't there. I say, but with me being your father, if you ever have something you want to do and you want to try and your friends are trying to peer pressure you, don't fall for the peer pressure. What you need to do is come and ask questions. And she was like, well, what if one of my friends want to say something about popping pills? I said, don't you take not one, because if you do, I don't know. You got to understand your dad had a life besides being your father before you got here. I'd sold drugs. I've been around people that's done pills, been crackheads and all that stuff. And the things that you don't want to experience in life will not help if you start taking stuff that's going to counterbalance your chemical balance in your body and in your mind. And to make a long story short, she was like, well, Dad, can you promise me that when I get a certain age that you will smoke weed with me? And I looked at her, I said, yeah, your 16th birthday, that's what we'll do. Because your 15th birthday, I'm taking you out on a date because you and I are going out on a date so I can show you exactly how someone should treat you if they like you.
Right.
Because I want to make sure that you know you're being respected. I want to make sure that you know you're being protected. And I also want to make sure that you know this person is being very attentive and they like you for real. Not just taking you out, trying to have a little fun, and then something happened, and then you have, oops, another baby coming, and you're not ready for a baby because you're not fully grown up yourself. And after having that conversation with her, because she talked a lot to my lady, and I'm so grateful for my lady because her and both my daughters, they have great conversations with her that they can't have with their own mother. But I know when they talk to her that they will tell her, hey, can you bring this up to my dad? Because I don't know how he'll feel about it. And I'll say it. And I tell both my daughters, even my son, I don't care what y'all bring to me. I know this if I know nothing else. I was a child too. Then on top of that, I became a teenager before I became an adult. So we all got to go through some things. It's just better for me to know that I'm very attentive to the points that everybody's made across the board, that we have to have those hard conversations and not be too objective, to be very subjective to our children, because we don't ever want them to feel like we're the enemy, we're the tyrant, and they can't come and say anything to us. And that's my spiel right there.
DJ, you just gonna come off like that there? Old professor, philosopher. I like that, man.
Tell the truth. I'm just telling the truth.
Very in depth.
Yes.
I think another approach, because again, I'm not an avid weed smoker, and so I had to teach from another angle, and I was able to. I have a testimony actually tied to this angle I was teaching from. I went to years ago, maybe like 25 years ago. I went to this women's shelter. It was an abuse, like it's a shelter that housed women with children who were suffering from substance abuse. and I taught this lesson, and I taught it from my mom's point of view. So my mom was an avid smoker. Because back then, when he was coming up, smoking was, well, just regular smoking was weed. And so my mom might have been smoking since she was like 12, maybe early. I'm sure she smoked with me. Nevertheless, she was an avid smoker. And so what I did at that particular time, I might have been like 25 years old at the time when I'm teaching this lesson. And so what I did was I said, okay, let's come to a medium number of when my mom started smoking and to where the cigarette prices would be with now that she's still smoking. And so let's just get a number. Let's get an average number. I think at that particular time, the cigarettes was like $3.25. It's in the 90s. And back then, the cigarettes, when she started, might have been $1. And so I said, okay, so let's get to a medium number, which would be $2 or something like that. And so what I did was I said she was a average pack-a-day smoker. She was in the entertainment industry. And so her tolerance was higher because of the industry was in. And so what we did was we add up the pack-a-day times the $2. And we did that for my age, which was 25 years. I didn't even factor in, because she didn't have me at 12, she had me at 20. So I said, you're going to get an eight year, just to balance out the numbers, we're going to disregard the 8 years she was smoking before she had me. But in the 25 years she had me, we're going to add those numbers, $2 a day times 25 years. And when I put the numbers on the board, I didn't know at that particular time, because I gave that lesson probably like in 1990 something. And so I didn't see this lady until about a good 2000, right? So mid-90s, I gave this lesson. She was on drugs. She was a crack addict at that particular time. She was on drugs and she had children. And so I run back into this particular lady probably like 5 years later. And guess where I see her at? Back to transparency, I see her in a club, a local club that everybody used to frequent. And so she recognized me when I didn't recognize her. And she came out and she gave me this big hug. She's like, oh, I'm so happy to see you, blah, blah, blah. She had another young lady with her. And when she hugged me, and she was like, you don't know who I am, do you? I'm like, I would be trying to play it off like, I was like, nah, not really. And she was like, you came to our program, and she had it like verbatim. She explained that thing like literally verbatim, which tells me it was true. And she said, and you did this exercise and you put the numbers on the board. She said, what you did that day changed my life. Long story short, that lady went from being a crackhead to a business owner to a very successful mom whose daughters, who was in the program with her, was helping her run the business. She had her own landscaping company. She had to become a homeowner. And she told me, I just want to thank you for that one lesson. And I'm sitting like, what? And this is just the transparent part. I'm like, well, damn, you're doing better than me. True. And I mean, I'm with you. Sometimes your clients, and I mean, sometimes, I would say 50% of the time, your clients actually do better than with your information than you do with it. And so with that,
true.
It goes to show how it was like, Lionel, because you wanted it so bad, you gave all yourself into that teaching that somebody believed and became a success with. And so I'm saying that to say this. When you, being a child, and this is back to Ron's point earlier, when you realize that you needed your children as much as they needed you, then it heightens who you are and how you give to your craft and your purpose and whoever you are in life. And so because I was a father at that particular time and I wanted so much to my children, I gave like I wanted. That's what I'm trying to say. And I gave to everything I did like I wanted for my children and like I wanted to give to my children at the time. And so giving on that particular level was able to change somebody's life. And it probably changed a whole bunch of other people's lives. But that's one particular life that sticks out to me. And I was so happy that she told me that, because at some point, whatever you do in life, you feel like, and this is a lot of times, you feel like it doesn't matter. You feel like it's not working. You feel like maybe you was a waste of time. And oftentimes my children remind me that it wasn't. And so whether that be a fatherhood, the father that you are, or whatever purpose that you're serving in life, you'll find out just God always give you a glimpse somewhere every season to let you know that you matter. And I guess that's what I'm saying to every parent that that's involved, no matter what situation you're in with your children, that you still matter and what you did matter. You understand? And that, I guess
Yes.
that'd be my take home. I would want parents to take home from this conversation.
So I'm gonna answer that question. For me, okay, so I've never tried smoking. I never smoking weed, that is. I haven't. Now that it's legal, maybe one day I will. But growing up, you had that staunch thing, that like gateway and all this other stuff. So when it came to my son, I never, and I decided early in life, I was like, I'm never gonna do anything, so that when my kids come and ask me, I can be like, I'm this way because I never use drugs, so you should never use drugs. That was the kind of message I always delivered. I didn't try anything, don't you try anything. And so, even in talking to my son and my daughter, same thing. I didn't try it, so you don't try it. And recently I had the conversation with my son about that. And I was like, if you ever decide that something that you want to do, talk to me first. But I always told him that growing up, talk to me first before, if it's something that you ever want to do, talk to me first. Let's talk it through. And same thing like Donald was saying, because I want to make sure if you ever do it, you're getting it from the right place, never the wrong place. Because you never know what people put in. Don't go on the street and try to buy it from the corner. Do it, go to a dispensary, just the education piece that goes along with it. I think for me, because of my background, ethnicity, cultural background, I should say, growing up in the Haitian household, that our thing was drinking alcohol, right? So you started at a young age with drinking wine and things like that. You had that classic drink cremas, which was an alcoholic beverage that you would drink, right? So I always, growing up like that, I was just like, that was something that my kids, I'll do the same thing. Because for me, when it came of age, and I think that a lot of people, when they turn 21, they have this big, I'm able to drink now. They go binge and they go drink all this stuff. And so I always had it in my mind, and I know that's not the same, I'm just using this as an example. I always had it in my mind that I don't want my kids to feel like they missed out, so that they got to do something later on. Because I was able to do it at a young age because of my, culture. I'm going to allow them to do it, but it's going to be controlled. And I always talk to them about controlling yourself when it comes to the consumption of alcohol. So, little red wine or something like that. And again, I did that because there would never be any outside influence. Like if your friends want to sneak into the alcohol cabinet, you would be like, nah, it's not something, I don't got to worry about that. You turn 21, you don't got to go and drink yourself into a stupor when you turn 21. Those are the kind of things that I always thought. And so for me, that transparency was there when it came to alcohol, because it was like, it's never something that was taboo. And I never treated it like it was taboo. And I think to answer that, even to, jump into the smoking piece, as long as you don't treat it like it's taboo, like it's something that, because oftentimes we covet what we feel we can't have. And then we think about it and obsess about it until we actually get it. And so if you don't treat it like it's something that they can't have, but it's a choice not to have it or not to do it, the mind reacts to it much more differently. It's not a no, I can't have it and I'm going to sneak and do it. It's a, if I wanted to, I could, I just choose not to. And I think that also will frame how they feel about a lot of things.
Oh, let me go back to see some more questions in the chat.
Well, I think, and if I missed the point about the adding up things, what I showed the young lady at that particular time was how much that my mom invested into cigarettes at that particular time, and what it came up to. And that, I think when we finished with the add, coming to the equation, the final equation was like something like almost like 30 something $1,000 at that particular time. In the mid 90s or something like that, you still can buy a halfway decent house for 50. and some houses for 40. And so when she saw the reality of, you know what, okay, his mom had a cigarette addiction, but I may have a crack addiction. My crack addiction far outweighed his mom's cigarette addiction. And if she spent 35,000, I may have spent far more. And so what she realized that she could have, she could have been a homeowner at that particular time. And it's something to be in your addiction, but you realize that vision, and then it materializes later on, and it happens. And just the fact that somebody can show you, and I think it's indicative to all of us to show each other the way. I think that's what God means by let your light shine. And that let your light shine is not just so you can be some type of superstar. That let your light shine is to show somebody else the way. That's all a light really is. And I think sometimes it gets misconstrued what that really means. And it took me a long time to realize that, because again, most people use the light or chase the light just to be some type of star, when it really is supposed to light a pathway for other people who used to be where you are. And so that's what I guess what the lesson was from that particular lesson for the young lady. And I saw her as when she was in treatment versus after she came out, and she went from treatment to triumph. You understand? And I think it let me, I guess it encouraged me to take myself a little bit serious, because even back then when I used to give the lessons, I didn't think I was worthy enough to even be listened to. But since I had the job at that particular time, I gave the best lesson I can give, and just to see the outcome of that. That's an evidence base within itself. So I'm telling you, and anybody who feel like whatever God put in their life, to not take your evidence base, your own personal evidence base and experiences for granted, because those are the very things that change the life. And if it changed one life, it can change more lives. So don't think that you have to be spoon-fed the solutions that you are. You understand? So that's just basically my philosophy about it.
It's interesting you say that, Lana, because oftentimes people, you don't understand the people that you touch, right? Because sometimes it goes, especially in the social services field, like you say, sometimes you're speaking to such a big crowd. It's just very rarely one-on-one. Sometimes you're speaking to a crowd just for that one time, and you're hoping that you reach somebody, right? And the fact that you don't, like I said, you don't know who you will reach in the moment that you say something or the moment that you do something. You just have to understand that the message is going to be delivered to who it's meant for, and they're going to receive it. Oftentimes oftentimes you hear friends and family tell you things, right? But it's when it comes from someone else out the blue that it really sets in, and it sticks to you. And so I think that it's important that even as we go about our days and stuff, and if you have something to say to someone, say it. You know what I'm saying? But let me put a disclaimer on it. Be constructive with your message. Make sure that it comes from a place of understanding, objectivity, with a little bit of subjectivity, because you want a little bit of emotion behind it so they can understand it's truly heartfelt. But it's often not what you say, but how you say it that reaches the most.
That's strange. And that's not even strange you said it, but just to expand on what you're saying, J-Rob, I had to realize this one thing about fatherhood. I was so focused on being a good father, so being a good father to my child or a father to my children, that I didn't realize that what was happening simultaneously in most men, and this every man on here listening. What you don't realize in trying to be a good father to your child is the type of man you become into your community. And so instinctively, I wasn't even intentional. Instinctively, me being a good father to my child made me a good man to my community. And so I am intentional about being a good father to my child, and instinctively became a good man to my community. 2 birds with 1 stone. And so if you don't think fatherhood is worth anything, it's worth so much more than you can ever imagine, because it's an education that you can get only by experience. You have to be present to show up those classes of sacrifice and love and humility and things that you don't want to deal with as a man, because those are things that makes us feel vulnerable. And raising your child will tap on all those vulnerabilities to make you to give you a holistic outcome of what it is to be a man to society.
I
Well,
agree
you know
with you
what? I'm gonna
100%.
say this one message. Oftentimes we say to our kids, man, what would you do without me? And as we become parents and really get engaged and involved, the message then turns, what would I ever do without you? And how could I ever really, like you said, because when you become engaged in your child's life, it changes you. You
Yes.
become different. And it hits you in a way that you never expect. And it hits you in a way you never realize until, and I have to say this, sometimes you don't realize it until someone else points it out to you, because you're just being who that child needs you to be, while other people are watching you be different to everybody else. If that makes sense. Just to what you were saying, Lionel, but you know.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, and I feel like I'm about to be a cloud that come over the conversation, right? But it's only to really reinforce the statement you're making, Gene. We see often a lot of horrible things that allegedly fathers have done, right? And people ask the question, how could they do that? How could they, unalive somebody? How could they take on their life? How could they take their own life? How could they do those things? But I think it resorts right back to the statement that you just made, that, people take for granted, and I think they take it a granted a lot, what it means for a man to end up becoming a father. I know we got all these stereotypes about what it is, but I'm talking about purity. And I can say this because every man I know on here would, one of the songs that I had shared, this was Santana, and it was called Daddy. And the song was called Daddy. And the stuff that he was saying in the song was, I'll take a kidney for you. I'll take a bullet for you. I'll do this. I'll do that. You never be without. Blah, 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 all these things that he was saying in the rap song. And I was thinking to myself is, a lot of times people really don't understand that, because I hear this very often. I think people dispute it, but I hear this very often. No one wants you to be better than them, than your father. They want the best for you. They want you to be better than them. They want you to outlive them. They want you to do all these things. So when you put these things in context, going back to what Gene said, it is something that happens to us. And what happens if those things are taken away, that they don't get to access them? Then you see a person who is affected and sometimes reacting from the effective behavior. Not to say that is saying that is acceptable to do, but that is an answer to your question of why. Because the same energy it takes to be so in love, or to be believing that your child is everything you is. And listen, I'm only saying it because you would never say that about a mama bear. No one would question a mama's bear tenacity, or what she would do and what would happen for her cubs, right? But I think sometimes we don't understand what papa bears do for their cubs. And so it's just kind of being able to look at that. And when you said that, Gene, it just made me think about, like, here's a great point to highlight. Message. When Gene was describing that, and it was really good, that here's an answer to some of the questions that you're saying. How could someone do something so unbelievable? And there you have that missing part that we don't get to talk about, and the media doesn't talk about it. Nobody talks about it, but it's there.
Amen, my brother.
You definitely had to, man, you was on point, because it's 8:30 on the head. You had to wrap up.
Yeah, hey man, I was already clocking. So again, I just want to thank everybody for joining. And listen, this conversation was not probably what somebody thought it was going to be, because it's never going to be on the Fatherhood Think Tank. What you might see our topic to be and where we go, it really depends on the minds of the fathers who are on and where we take it. And it doesn't and it's not any agenda. It's just what comes out of Father's mind and their thoughts of the conversation we have. So we welcome you to like, share, subscribe, join us. Listen, the goal was to get 1,000, but I'm happy to have 100. But maybe over the next couple of days, we can maybe get to 150. If you can go out and like, share, and subscribe, and let's get to 150 before our 100th show next week. And I'm going to do some things all week to kind of get us to that point, advertising our 100th episode. I want to thank again the fathers for joining. I want to thank the people in the chat.
Dr. Ron.
Yes.
Real quick. You know how we used to have those leaflets or those cards we used to give out?
I'm already on it. Don't worry.
Because
I'm already. Listen. Don't worry, brother. I'm already on. I took a picture of a model of it today, so I'm already
okay.
That's a part of the stuff that I'm gonna be, because everything will be right in line. I'll be sending that electronically. I at least talk to Gene and how he can, we kind of get that electronically out to everybody. With not just that, but also the QR codes to go to the little different places, to the band app and to here and there, so they really can be fully a full information on what's happening, how they can get in contact with a beautiful put together piece displaying the Fatherhood Think Tank that was written by our one and only Dr. Lightborn.
Because I'm involved with so many different men, especially throughout the week or in my going out and coming in, that I'm thinking, man, if I only had that missing piece that you're talking about now, I could put it in their hand and invite them to come join. So thank you.
All right. With that being said, fathers, repeat after me. I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
Come on, fathers. I say that I am.
I am.
I say that you are.
You are.
I say that we are.
We are.
Championship.
Elder Tommy, you trying to come back for your title, huh?
Yeah.
We'll see everybody here. If you want to, see down in the description below. You can join us tomorrow. We'll continue this conversation. I will see you next week for our 100th episode of Fatherhood Think Tank.
No, I know. Cut it off. Yeah, you can cut the